Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, How Applied Materials Deploys Faster SAP Projects and Boosts Quality with Test Automation, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Worksoft. My name is Steve Paul. I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenter, and later in the program we'll ask for your feedback. You can participate in our Q&A session by asking questions about the information presented in this webinar at any time. Just type your question into the Q&A text box located below the speaker bios on the left, and then click the Submit button. We'll answer as many questions as time permits after the presentation. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event, and you can download a PDF copy of the presentation by clicking in the resource box in the bottom left of our console. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the Help ? Icon on the bottom right of our console. And if slides are not advancing, please press the F5 key on your keyboard to refresh your console. Now on to the presentation, How Applied Materials Deploys Faster SAP Projects and Boosts Quality with Test Automation. Discussing today's topic will be Heather Whitfield, Program Manager of the SAP Testing Center of Excellence at Applied Materials. As Program Manager, Heather has managed quality assurance for several large SAP implementations and has used this experience to build a QA framework for SAP and other applications. Also joining us is Toby Capello, Vice President of Services at Worksoft. With over 20 years of experience driving software adoption, Toby is responsible for managing all aspects of Worksoft's global client services organization, focused on providing expert, education, and delivery services to ensure the success of Worksoft customers. Now we'll hear from Toby.
Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate it, and welcome everyone. Just to go through the agenda real quick, we're going to have two components of today's presentation. The first component will be Heather, and during that component, Heather is going to go through an introduction of Applied Materials. She's going to go through what the enterprise application landscape looks like within Applied Materials, the business needs and drivers for the automation within the organization, the organizational team and structure, establishing a testing center of excellence, building a roadmap for automation, and then what everybody's going to be very interested in is the results the organization has achieved, the success factors that created those results, and where they're planning on going in the future. Then I will pick up the presentation and talk a little bit about our partnership with Applied Materials and how together we've brought automated business process validation to both Applied Materials as well as how it applies to many other organizations out there in the industries. And so with that, and without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Heather and let her cover her portion of the presentation and the success that Applied Materials has enjoyed over the recent past.
Great. Thanks, Toby. So today, I would like to discuss how Applied Materials uses tools, standard processes, and business process validation to deliver projects faster while increasing the quality and reducing overall project risk. I'll talk about our growing automation coverage, how we have shortened our test cycles for projects by reducing the manual testing that's required, and then how this impacted the overall project cost and how we were able to show reductions there. I'll also touch on our plans to grow our Testing Center of Excellence. We are looking to expand beyond SAP into other applications. So, looking to expand that knowledge center as well as expand our automation roadmap so that we can demonstrate our value across all the applications within Applied Materials. So topics I will cover are around automation and how automation has enabled us to achieve really good, significant coverage across our core end-to-end business processes. We define core as anything that's really business critical, anything that we would want to test on a consistent basis to ensure that it's not negatively impacted. Talk about how automation has improved our business process quality and reduced that project risk. how it has reduced the manual testing efforts that are required. Always a lot of testing, for a project. It's a, significant part of the overall project duration. So automation has, really helped us to reduce that manual effort that's required. Also talk about how automation has helped us to deploy projects faster. Reducing that test cycle time so that we can shorten the project duration and then therefore support more projects per year. And how the use of these reusable test assets has increased our productivity and our quality. So we're able to test a lot more with better quality. So just a quick introduction to applied materials. This slide shows the official description, but basically applied materials makes the big machines that semiconductor, cell phone, TV, and solar manufacturers use to make their products. So that's just a little simpler explanation. Our 2014 revenue was around $9 billion. So, we're a fairly large corporation. We're a global company. We have a presence in most major markets, but as with most other semiconductor companies, our mothership resides in Santa Clara, California. So this is just a kind of an ugly, complex diagram of our SAP landscape that I included here really just to demonstrate some of the complexity that we have and how that creates challenges when planning and executing testing. Most of our end-to-end processes span across SAP modules and even interface in and out of non-SAP applications. So when trying to identify, what is the right tests and what will give us the most, benefit, it's always a challenge. So why automation? As most know, manual testing, for major projects is a significant piece of the overall project duration. For us, about 60% of a project is spent during doing testing. Manual regression testing in particular was a large area for us. It's a significant part of the overall test budget. We outsource our manual regression testing for most major projects. We overlap regression testing with our integration testing that's supported by the project resources. So we bring in a group of manual testers that helps us to execute all of those business processes that we feel could be impacted by those project changes. So that really became our primary target for automation. We felt like that manual regression testing area was where we could have the biggest impact. And we needed to find a more cost-effective way to ensure that those core business processes were not impacted by those changes introduced by a project. Just throwing an army to do those manual tests, was very expensive, and we felt that there was a better way, and we looked to automation to help us solve that problem. We also needed to reduce the time that was spent by our high-value functional analysts to support the manual testing throughout the project test cycles because we felt their time obviously was better spent on more strategic efforts. So we've been a Worksoft customer for several years, and we had been taking a kind of a grassroots approach to developing our automation. We just kept our foot on the gas pedal, and we kept plugging away, kind of stealing some budget wherever we could, trying to maintain the focus. And it was slow but sure. Had a lot of lessons learned that we applied throughout the process. But last year we had an opportunity to really showcase what we could do and the benefits that we could bring by the work that we had been investing in. That was because of an oopsie that we had in production that occurred after a project went live, and we were called in to execute our full automation library on a weekly basis until the project was stabilized. They wanted that opportunity to not only test each fix item independently, but they wanted a chance to test all of those fix items together on a weekly basis in a more, end-to-end process flow. So the project basically did not introduce any fixes until we gave them the green light and said that all the tests had passed. So that really created a renewed interest in automation and recognition of the value that we could bring to not only project testing directly during the cycles, but even afterwards, to add that extra confidence that what we were delivering into production was of good quality. So after that event, our IT organization provided us with a dedicated budget. So that was great news for us. We could continue to invest in automation and grow our libraries quarter by quarter. We have a team of offshore developers that's been with us from the start. We were developing in a different technology prior, but since investing in Worksoft have moved all of our SAP automation over into Worksoft and leveraged the full suite of tools. And over time, of course, as the experience with our team has grown and their efficiency has improved, we've gotten to the point where, with our limited budget, we can develop around 40 to 45 end-to-end business process tests per quarter. One thing that's really helped us with that is that new Worksoft Certified Capture tool. It's been a real easy tool that we can use with our business process experts so that they don't have to spend a lot of time documenting test steps in Excel templates. They can just work through their process end to end, do the recording, and then quickly send those process documentation videos over to the development team. So it just helps us to overcome that challenge I think that everyone faces when trying to invest in automation, is really getting that business process knowledge over to that development team so that we can develop the right scenarios. So we are leveraging that visibility that we have received due to recent events to formalize our QA practices. We have a centralized SAP Test Center of Excellence. We have a dedicated program manager. We offer test leadership support to projects, and we manage the team of offshore automation developers. We found that really standardizing those processes and having consistent leadership improves test efficiency, not just with all of the manual testing, but really provides that visibility that we need to ensure that when we identify candidates for automation, that they're the right candidates. So here's how we started. We were challenged with identifying the right business process tests to automate, and we didn't have an effective way to measure our coverage. For anyone else out there that's tried to cover tests with automation, they always ask, well, what's your coverage? How much can I reduce manual testing because of the automation? Give me a percentage. And we were really struggling with that. So we had some project idle time. There was a project that the go live was delayed. So as typical for testing, I borrowed those project analysts and asked them to work with me over a 6-week period to identify those core business processes for their areas. So again, any test that they felt was critical, something that for a major project would be included in a regression cycle. So we felt like that was our repository for those core business processes that we could then target for future automation. And then we implemented an impact analysis tool that we use to identify which of those core business processes are being impacted by project changes, and then we can proactively identify which of those core business process tests to target for automation. So for a project where we have some significant lead time, like an upgrade project, that's better. But even for some of our implementation projects, we have time when we can identify where they're going to be testing, what in the existing landscape is going to be potentially impacted, and then focus our automation in there so that we can have those tests developed and ready to directly reduce the manual testing for that specific project. So all of that pre-work resulted in a way for us to target the right core business process tests for automation and gave us a way to measure our automation coverage. Of course, automating the right tests results in better quality. You have more confidence of the job that your testing has done. Right now, we have around 500 end-to-end tests in our core business process library. The challenge ongoing will be to maintain that library. So, having that centralized test center of excellence now, hopefully we can move forward in resolving that challenge. But so that's really our target for our full automation. Of those 500 right now, we have about 200 tests that are automated. We have a lot more content in our automation library, but because we started by just asking resources, hey, what do you think we should automate next quarter? We don't have a way to directly link those existing tests to those core business process tests. So we take a conservative measure and say that we have about 200 that directly cover those end-to-end core business process tests. And then the more value that we can demonstrate, the more we're finding that people are approaching us. We were having to reach out and do a lot of publicity on our capabilities before, but now that we're able to really show a direct impact to project duration and project cost, we are getting a lot of more people wanting to join our party within SAP and even without or outside of SAP. So all of the work that we've been doing over the last few years, especially over the last quarter or so, really came together for our last major upgrade project. This was definitely a high point for us. It earned us a spot on our IT all-hands meeting where we were able to showcase to our entire IT organization the value that we brought to that project. As most folks know, an upgrade project is almost all testing. So we were really able to, have a significant impact for that project. Compared to previous upgrades, we measured that we tested 4 times as much. So it was a much bigger upgrade this time, since our landscape has grown so much. But we were able to test in half the time that it took as compared to the previous upgrade. And we reduced the day one production tickets by over 60%. So definitely some good metrics and a huge win for us and a lot of really good visibility. So, what we learned and what contributed to our success, we started out by taking small steps. Again, kind of a grassroots approach. We didn't try big bang. we didn't feel that our corporate culture was really ready to tolerate a big bang approach where we just came in and automated everything and tried to roll that out. So, again, took small steps, demonstrated the success and the value, each project we were able to support, improve through each iteration, and then continue to grow. We never took our foot off the gas, kept the team focused, kept trying to build that visibility, and slowly chugged along. A big thing for us, too, was investing in metrics. We spent a lot of time developing metrics that we could use for each project, repeatable, reusable metrics. And then we found every opportunity that we could to verbalize our successes and showcase our successes and to do it loud and proud. And then just make sure that the executives continued to support our vision and were really, in the train with us, and we just kept, showcasing again, with metrics and let the data prove that we were, continuing to add value, so that each time, those budget decisions came and they were looking for any fat that they could trim, they really were hesitant in trimming any of our budget because we could directly correlate that spend, back to cost savings. So what's next for us? We are expanding our Test Center of Excellence scope beyond SAP. We felt that our entire landscape could benefit from consistent standards, consistent leadership for testing, and tried and true methodology. We want governance. We want projects to engage with the test center early, so that we can influence their test approach. We feel we have a lot to offer. We have a lot of experience that can be leveraged, a lot of templates that can be used, and not a lot of projects are fully aware of how we can help them, to make their test cycles more efficient. So we want a way that we can insert ourselves a little early in the project management cycles, maybe even in the initiate phase, so that we could influence overall how they're planning to approach testing for their projects. Continuing to invest in automation, not stopping this train. We do want to expand beyond SAP for automation as well. We've already started some automation projects with with Workday and some other HR applications. So again, the more benefit that we can bring across the landscape, and the more visibility that we can provide, the better. So Toby, that's all I had.
Great.
You can take it from here.
Well, yep, I will. Thank you very much, Heather. And before I advance and give a quick overview on automated business process validation and what we see in the marketplace, I want to take an opportunity to just kind of summarize a little bit about our partnership with Applied Materials and what we see, since we interact with hundreds of companies every day that are looking to get value and benefit out of automation and automated business process validation. Because what Heather just shared with you has a lot of similarities from what we see across many organizations, but there are some key differences, and I want to point some of those out. And so when you look at the similarities you see are, and Heather introduced it very early, limited support, limited dollars, limited focus to go address automation. And that's not dissimilar from where we see in a lot of organizations, which is you may have a pocket of the organization or a select number of people or a select group of folks or a select initiative that can see some value, but it's difficult with anything, not just automated business process validation, to gain broad organizational acceptance without some proof points. The other thing, if you flip all the way over to the other side of it that we see, is the significant value that Applied Materials has now realized from automation and automated business process validation. But where I believe Applied Materials differs, and I think would be some key points for some of the audience to take away, is in the very early parts, even though progress was, as Heather defined it, grassroots and slow, Applied Materials was still committed to the initiative, committed to the capability, and committed to the competency. And Heather specifically, because I know this very well, worked very diligently to do as much as she could with what she'd been given. And so I think that focus allowed the initiative to maintain a flicker of life until they reached what Heather calls the compelling event, what I call a defining event, which is that event which tips the scales in the favor of we got to go do this on a grander scale. And Heather tells the story about the oopsie. Unfortunately, it was that case within Applied Materials. We don't wish that for any of our partners and our customers, but in many cases, sometimes you have to have a knock on the head kind of a moment to get the organization to wake up and then move into significant acceleration, significant adoption, and quite frankly, significant value for the organization. The other thing that helped that happen was excellent executive sponsorship, and Heather talked about that as well as a part of this. Because the reality of what Heather shared in her experiences both before the oopsie, the defining event, the compelling event, and after is the reality that most of our organizations see today in what we call the modern enterprise application landscape. Every organization out there has a complex array of applications solving a variety of business process needs within the organization. Heather began Applied Materials around SAP. She mentioned Workday, other applications that are out there. There are literally hundreds of applications that make up your core business processes within your organization today. Any one of those being a link in the chain that could cause the chain to break and cause your business to have its oopsie. And so what we don't want to see and what we want to help with is how do I validate that all the piece parts and all the links in the chain are working well together, knowing full well that my landscape is complex and diverse. Let's add some complexity to that even more, which is not only is my landscape complex and diverse, but when I look at the way my business works, my business is a collection of end-to-end processes that engage various points in this landscape and various components of the landscape. It would be a nice world if everything we did for one process area was within one application, SAP, and everything in another process area was in another application, Workday, or within another application, Salesforce.com. The reality of our businesses today, and it's becoming increasingly so, is each step, each stakeholder, each participant in an end-to-end process is going to have a different interaction with a different part of that landscape and offers a different level of complexity. The second thing is organizations are increasingly becoming aware of the end-to-end processes within themselves. Many organizations aren't structured organizationally, human-wise, to be viewed in an end-to-end process kind of way, but you need to look at these end-to-end processes because that's the way your business works and that's the way your customers see you. So if you don't do that and you don't validate that not just each individual component of your processes work, but your end-to-end processes work and all of the elements or players or participants in the landscape work, then you're not validating that your business today will work the same way as it needs to work tomorrow after a change. And then you're putting yourself at the risk of an oopsie. And so that brings really the real challenge set for organizations, for CIOs, and for business leaders is all of those components bring to it risk to our technical environment. And today, IT, your technical environment, your application landscape is no longer something that sits off to the side and solves a few problems. It is core to what you do every day. It's core to how you sell products, how you fulfill products, how you deliver services, how do you fulfill services, how you do what you do within your industry and within your business. And any interruption means potential risk of thousands and thousands to millions and millions to hundreds of millions of dollars to your organization. And unfortunately, we run into those experiences all the time, as case in point, Heather introduced today. And those complexities or that change or that risk manifests itself in a number of different ways. We've covered the complexity within your environment. The pace of change is another one. I'd be hard-pressed to bet that anybody here on the phone today doesn't have increasing pressure on your business and on your IT organization to change and evolve with your markets, with your competitors, and with what's going on in your industry. We hear over and over again from our customers, we can no longer afford to do annual major releases. We need to get to quarterly, weekly, even more often than that. And then as we move in an environment to more control, more ownership of some of the landscape being outside of maybe the four walls of a given industry or a given technology department, again, add all these together and we're looking at an exponential growth of risk for the organization and an exponential chance of an oopsie or a compelling event or a defining event. So what we look to do at Worksoft and what we look to do with partner with our organizations and our customers around automated business process validation is bring a platform and approach to the table that allows our partners to mitigate that risk, to validate their end-to-end processes, to flatten out, to filter out, to obfuscate the complexity that may exist within their environment today, to ensure that they find and they have some of those key metrics that Heather talked about as far as removal of defects, as far as identification of bugs, and at a tactical level and at a macro level, that they ensure that their business today works the same way tomorrow after the change. And we do that through an approach with our partner companies to understand and analyze the processes they have in their organization today. And we do it and the way we do it is different than anybody else out there. We do it in an automated, less intrusive way, and then take that and turn that into automated business process validation so we can ensure that they continue to work, again, tomorrow as well as they did the day before the change would happen. And so Heather's example is a great example of an organization that knew and knows that this level of complexity is not sustainable in the old ways of doing things, aka manual testing, and we need to do something different. And I give Heather and the Applied Materials organization and her executive sponsorship a ton of credit for sticking with it until they got to that compelling event, until they got to that defining event, and now it's just a downhill slide, and the value that her executive sponsor, and the value that the Applied Materials organization is going to realize both today, tomorrow, and long into the future is going to be huge. So Heather, thank you very much for sharing your story. I know we may have some questions that are they're going to be coming up. So Steve, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Excellent presentation. Before we go to our audience Q&A, though, we'd also like to ask our audience to please fill out a feedback form survey that is now going to appear on your desktop. To complete this form, just press the Submit Answer button at the bottom of the page, and we thank you in advance for filling out this form. Your participation in our survey will allow us to serve you better in the future. And now on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box located on the bottom left of the console and then click the Submit Question button. And looks like we have a number of good questions here, so we might as well get started with our first one from William. It's for Heather. You've already covered 200 of your 500 processes with automation. How long will it take to cover the next 200?
Well, so we are able to develop around 40 to 45 scripts per quarter with our current budget. If we can expect to maintain that budget, then it'll take us over a year, we think. But that's okay because we're hoping to increase our budget to start looking at some other non-SAP applications as well. So we'll just continue to grow our team and hopefully get to where we can develop faster.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, a question here from Suda. What is your execution schedule, and how do you execute them? And again, to Heather.
Yeah, good question. So right now, we have just executed all of our automation in support of projects, but there is some good executive support right now to move us to a more structured release schedule. Typically, we release changes into production, based on their urgency, so kind of whenever. So we haven't really been able to have much impact on that from an automation perspective. But as we hopefully move to that release schedule, whether that be weekly or monthly, we're hoping that that will line us up so that we can support those releases, so we can trigger our automation to run, more lights out every week or every month, whatever that schedule turns out to be. And we actually just upgraded Execution Manager so that we're poised to be able to respond very quickly to not only those releases, but also any other automation requests that come in.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Deborah has a question. Can you share more about how you secured executive support for automation?
Sure. I'm a pesky, persistent person. So you really have to put yourself in the face of the executives as often as you can. And one thing that I did, I met with our communications director and just asked for his advice. How should I be promoting our services or our value better? So one thing that I do that was a recommendation from him was to put together a quarterly newsletter and really use the data to highlight how we've grown, the benefits that we've realized, how we have reduced cost, increased quality, et cetera. So really just getting in front of the executives with every opportunity, and our CIO gave us the biggest opportunity really we could have by inviting us into our all hands meeting so that we could really use that as an opportunity to showcase what we could do. So that's a required meeting, so everybody within our IT organization was there, so that was the best press that we have gotten to date. But to get invited there was because the team, the entire team for that project just executed flawlessly.
Great. David wants to know, do you have a lot of variation in business process throughout the company's locations?
Yeah, we do, and that's something else that just adds to the list of challenges that we face. Even some of our sales processes, depending on the plant, the sales org, the entire process can change. So in some cases, we're able to use the same automated test and just feed it a data set where we can have that same test execute for each line, and again we're able to do that where the process remains the same with those different data parameters. But unfortunately there are some cases where we have to create separate tests based on the data that we are using, since the process will change. And locations is a key parameter that will change the process.
Thank you. Dave has a question. Can you provide some examples of the metrics that you use to showcase the value of automation?
Sure. One thing that we've invested in recently is calculating that DRE, that defect removal efficiency, and trying to socialize really what that means, so that when we throw that metric out there, whether it's a green arrow up or a red arrow down, for a project, folks know what that means. The other is we actually built a data mining tool that will go in and mine through all of our production incidents and will correlate those production incidents back to a specific project. So again, in helping us to calculate that DRE and really the efficiency or the effectiveness of our testing, particularly with this last upgrade as our example, we were able to show that compared to the last upgrade, the day one or those go live tickets were reduced by over 60%. So that was because we had some key columns in our tickets that we could update, or we could have our help desk or the end users update so that we could tie that particular incident back to the project, so that we can really show, because that's it, right? The proof's in the pudding. So we felt like really being able to link our different systems up, HPQC, our automation in Worksoft, even our manual tests, and our service system, that we could have all the pieces together where we could really provide some good metrics. And of course, the key metric being, how did the project do when it went live? How ugly was it, or how exciting was it when they hit the go button?
Right. Let's see. Martin has a question for Heather. How long did it take to go from initial use of testing automation to full acceptance across the business?
Really, it's taken us a couple of years. And I think, again, that was because we didn't have a dedicated budget. We took what we could, and it was a little slow for us to be able to really show the value. Initially, when we executed our automation, it was more for that, secondary insurance policy, where we can directly reduce manual testing with our automation because we have that linkage, to those core business process tests. We can show that we are, directly affecting the cost, and show a dollar reduction, and that has really helped us with that socialization and that acceptance. But again, it took us some time to kind of build up the library where it was effective and to do that baseline work that we needed in establishing those core business process tests. And then now, things are escalating, much at a much faster rate. But I would say a couple of years really from the start to where we are now.
Okay, and we have time for a few more here. We've got a number of great ones. Shireen wants to know, how do you manage the maintenance needed for the automated scripts as new functionality is introduced into the system?
Right. So we have our offshore team that supports our automation, and so far, when our automation library was smaller, it was much easier to maintain. I think that we've gotten to the point now where it's big enough that we need to actually carve out a part of a resource to support that run and maintain of those libraries. One thing that we found too is just execute them often. We learned that lesson. We didn't have a lot in our library initially. We were asked to execute maybe twice a year. I think definitely when we get to a more structured release, then we will run them every week, every month, and that in itself will help ensure that they are maintained. We do want to start looking again at the Certify Impact capabilities to see if we can use that tool to help us identify which of our automated tests are being impacted by a group of project transports. I know, since I went to the conference this year up in Dallas that they've had an upgrade and have some improvements there. So if I get a moment, I would like to explore that a little bit more as well and see if we can leverage that upgraded tool to help us repair our tests that might get broken because of new functionality.
Okay, Ken wants to know, how large is your offshore TCOE?
Well, our TCOE, we're just formalizing that. And right now it consists of myself, one test lead, and then the team of offshore developers. We have anywhere between 8 to 10 developers that support us. We just brought on some more, I think 1, 2 more, to support some of the automation in the HR space that we've just started. So still a relatively small team. It's really not based on demand. It's really based on how many resources we need considering the budget constraints that we have.
Okay, and I think we've squeezed in one more question here before we wrap up. What is the biggest technical challenge you met during the implementation process?
So I'm going to assume that this means the implementation of the Worksoft tool or the Worksoft suite. Biggest technical challenge? I think the biggest technical challenge that we faced and possibly still do face is that our development team is offshore, and there are some response time concerns that we need to address both within our IT structure, our network structure, and then also possibly enlist the help from the Worksoft technical folks. So far it's manageable, but I think as we expand our TCOE and expand our automation coverage, that's one technical area that we still need to work on.
Okay, thanks very much, and unfortunately that's going to be all the time we have for today's Q&A. So if we didn't get to your question during this live session, someone will be able to follow up with you over the next few business days. And for more information, you can see the contact information that is here before you. We want to thank you all for attending today's webinar, How Applied Materials Deploys Faster SAP Projects and Boosts Quality with Test Automation, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Worksoft. Shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder so you can access this presentation on demand. And on behalf of our guests, Heather Whitfield, Program Manager, SAP Testing of Excellence with Applied Materials, and Toby Capello, Vice President of Services with Worksoft, we want to thank you for your time and have a great day.